Welcome to How to Build and Maintain Effective Design Tables. My name is Josh Altergott, Support Manager for Computer-Aided Technology. We are a reseller out of the Midwest region. In particular, I'm located in the Chicago office that we have. And so what we're here to do today, talk a little bit about design tables and configurations. I guess housekeeping note as well. For when we're done here, if you guys don't mind going to the SOLIDWORKS World app, filling out the evaluations, and if you guys were in any of my other ones, go back and do those as well too, please. So how we run a session here, show you some information on a slide. We'll switch over to SOLIDWORKS every once in a while. These are simplified examples, not necessarily real world, focusing on specific topics. We're going to want you to bring up questions as you have them. It's kind of hard with the big room here to see everybody, but I will try and get to all of them. We might defer you to a later point. The more discussion we have with this, the better we have it is for everybody. And then obviously, like I said, please fill out the reviews in the app when you're all done. So how many people have been to this presentation before of mine? Only one or two, okay. That's good. How many people here are using configurations, design tables at this point? Oh. All right, it's a good start as well. So here's the agenda. Lots of information to cover. We'll go through it as quick as we can here, get you guys out and on to the next session. So we're going to start off design tables and parts, talk about the basics of configurations, the design table basics, how we format, create, kind of the planning stages of our design table, some execution tips, how we can bring it all together, taking it to the next level, configuration publisher, design tables and assemblies, how it's similar to the part, how it's different than the part design table. And lastly, we'll talk about design tables and drawings. So first thing we want to talk about, what's new to configurations and design tables for 2015? Is everybody here using, how many people are using 2015 so far? A few? Okay. So SOLIDWORKS, every year they're always adding new features, new functions to these. There's a configurations toolbar now. We can pop this up at any point. I drop mine into the middle of my screen. You can dock it just like you do anything else. With the configurations toolbar, you can switch configurations without having to change tabs in the feature manager. So just saves you a few mouse clicks is what it does at that point, especially when you got a lot of configurations in your model. Just right click on any toolbar and you'll see a list of all the different toolbars there. Configuration or configurations is the one that's listed out there. Yeah, no worries. So the question, by the way, was how to access that toolbar. So other things that are new to design tables and configurations, mates inside of configurations. If you edit a distance or angle mate, you can select which configurations to apply this to. This is only in the edit. When you first create the mate, you won't see those extra dialogues in there for configurations. The ones that we see in the lower right down here. These guys right here. You won't see that when you first create them. You will see that though when you edit the mate. Also, toolbox, there's customized configuration names. There's a bunch of stuff that we can do inside of the SOLIDWORKS toolbox. Take a look at the SOLIDWORKS help to see all the changes that they've made for configurations inside of that. Makes it a lot easier to do certain operations. So first thing we'll talk about, like I said, we're going to start with the basics here, the configuration basics. Different versions of a part within a single part file. That's what configurations do for us. We have a configuration manager. We can activate, add, edit, different configurations. Most common items that we're going to configure, dimensions, feature suppression, custom properties, material. Those are the common things that we're going to work with inside of there. So if we jump over to SOLIDWORKS here, here's a part that we have, very simple part like I said. It's just got a simple extrude and a cut through it. And what we can do with each of these is we can create configurations of it. You come to the configuration manager, you tell it what you want, whether it's got a hole or a no hole. It's just suppressing a feature. Editing dimensions, just making changes to those dimensions, and then controlling each of those with the dimension dialog box there. So when I go to modify that dialog box, I have the ability to specify what configuration something is being used for. Either this configuration, all, or if we have a lot of configurations, we can specify and pick and choose what we're going to apply that dimension to or apply that dimension value to. All right, so design tables. This is kind of, the next step beyond just regular configurations. Excel spreadsheet controlling our configurations at that point in time. We can format. Configuration names are down the left-hand column. Parameters to control are across the top column. And you always want to be careful with the syntax that you put in there. You want to make sure you got the right characters in there, no spaces unless there needs to be. You just got to follow the general rules with them. So, and what we end up with this is we take that very same part file that we had and we'll open up one that's controlled with a design table. When we look at the configuration tab here, almost everything looks the same with the exception of we now have the little Excel symbol in front of these. We also have the table box up here that shows us our design table. Same things happen. Changing the values, whole or no whole, different length values. When you do go to double click on some of these dimensions to modify them, you will notice a different color to those dimensions. Let's pop that back up again. There we go. We get that magenta color. That's showing us that that value is being controlled by our design table. So anything that's being controlled with the design table is going to have that, that different color to signify what it is. So when we're creating our design tables or inserting them, we got a couple different options. We can go in and have a blank design table created. We can tell it from file, linked or unlinked. You gotta be careful with those because you're importing an existing Excel spreadsheet. So you gotta make sure all the syntax lines up with everything. We can have it auto create. My personal favorite, let the software do the work for you at that point in time. And there's two ways to generate these auto creates. Either multiple configurations already exist or only one configuration exists. If we have a bunch of configurations that already exist and we tell it to auto create, SOLIDWORKS dumps in all the data for us automatically. So when we look at our two parts here that I have, so this guy's got no design table in it right now, but it has several different configurations. When I tell SOLIDWORKS to insert my table, and I tell it to auto create it, we'll worry about the other options here in a few minutes. We're going to let this run. It goes ahead, it does its thing. It finds any values that are different between each of those configurations and automatically puts those in there for us. So description, part number, color, but most importantly, here's our length. And here's our state of our current feature, whether it's suppressed or unsuppressed. Puts all those in there, you click outside of it, it generates that design table for you, and now we see this looks just like my other file that I had opened a few minutes ago. I'm going to go ahead and close that one so I don't forget to make that not save. So now what do we do if we have one that only has one configuration inside of it? Well, we get some different options when we tell it to auto create. SOLIDWORKS is actually going to look at that model and say, where is it at? What is it doing? What do we want to do with it? So we'll open up this part file here. This has got no configurations inside of it whatsoever. Same thing, insert, tables, design table. And we'll tell it to auto create. What we get in place of this is now it asks us, what do we want to control at that point in time? So this is giving me the power to choose exactly what I want to put in there. I can choose the different dimension values, different features, all of that. Go ahead and cancel that. And go ahead and get out of it for right now. All right. So that's two ways of going about creating those. Now, the basics for editing a design table. If we want to add a feature or a dimension to a design table, make sure the appropriate table cell is selected. You want to make sure you're in the right row, the right column. You got everything selected for when it goes in there. We can double click a dimension to add it to the table. We can double click a feature to add it to the table as well. We create new configs by adding rows to the table. So if you're familiar with Excel and have some little bit of skill with it, it's going to help you out a lot in here because you can copy and paste the different rows. This is working just like Excel does for us at that point in time. All right, so let's just jump back in here. So this one has our design table in here already. We can right click at any point in time. So when we go in and we click outside of the design table, and it puts us back into the part. To get back into it, find that table in the tree there in the tables folder, right click, and we can edit the table. It's going to ask us if we want to update it. Anything that's not included in the table, we can include it at that point in time. There's a box here for show unselected items again. So this gives you the control of whether it shows up again or it doesn't. I usually always check this just to make sure, because I know as soon as I tell it not to show me again, the boss is going to come around and say, that's the value we need to control, and it won't pop up automatically. What?
After you've done that, is there a way to get it to come up?
No. Is there? And it'll pop up again. Okay. Thank you. So there is an option in there for it. So, all right. And what we can do is we can come in here, we can grab anything else that we want to control. You double click on it, and it'll add it into that value there for you. If we show the different annotations, we can add those in as well and pop those in there also. Edit, what the gentleman said, in order to get the dialog box to pop back up, is edit the design table feature itself, and there's a checkbox in there for it. So the basics of editing the table. Tables is edited inside a sub-window inside of the SOLIDWORKS graphics area. All of your SOLIDWORKS ribbons are going to be replaced with the Excel ribbons, or you got edit table in new window. This works out well. Most of us have dual monitors at this point in time, so it actually brings up Excel for you, and it puts your Excel chart over in a new window. What I like about this is now you got that flexibility to bounce back and forth with different operations inside of SOLIDWORks while keeping this here. As soon as you click in the graphics area, it doesn't go away on you at that point in time. So just a few different options there. So if we come back here, we tell it edit table in new window. It's going to fire up Excel for me. Still got that same dialog that we had there before. Now we got Excel running in the background here. We got SOLIDWORKS on the other side, so we can play around with it that way as well. Yes, sir.
Have you found that having SOLIDWORKS open, or I'm sorry, having Excel open and then opening a design table in a new window causes issues?
I have not. We've seen some things in the past as far as, work and support different versions of Microsoft, whether it be 2007, 2010, and it depends on the version of SOLIDWORKS that you're using. So there is some compatibility issues that way. So in that case, we do find some issues sometimes. Yeah, if it doesn't auto start like mine did right there, yeah, then definitely go ahead, start Excel first, and then do your edit table in new window. Sometimes it's down to the machine and the way the admin's got it set up as well. Some people have, Excel loaded out on the server, and it takes longer for it to pull across the server. So there's a lot of different things that could cause that.
If you have Excel open and you're editing a cell, and you try to edit the design table, it will error.
Okay. And that's another good point the gentleman brought up, is if we edit a design table in a new window, you already have something up inside of Excel, you're editing that cell, it's going to throw an error for you at that point in time too. So. Yeah, very good. Thank you. All right, so the design table options available when the table is created or with edit feature, and we get the allows design table parameters to be edited in the SOLIDWORKS models. So this kind of gives you a bi-directional path between the design table and SOLIDWORKS. We can double click on a dimension value, update it there, it's going to update our design table. Or if we update it in the design table, it's going to update it in the part model for us. Design table updates to reflect model changes. We also have the ability to blocks design table parameters from being edited inside the SOLIDWORKS model. This keeps you only working inside of the spreadsheet at that point in time. A warning notice shown when a model edit is attempted. Now this one, if you turn this one on, But then when the dialog box that you see in the lower right there comes up, if you check do not show this message again, it's automatically going to turn that off for you, and it's automatically going to add that into the dismiss messages inside the system options for you. So we had another presentation earlier this week about dismiss messages, and this is just another one of those. So warn when updating the design table. If edit control is set to allow, we'll see a warning that the table is being updated, and that's what we're talking about there as well. Some of the other options that we have out there for new parameters. In a model that has a design table, if we suppress a feature in one config but not in another, or if we change a dimension in one configuration but not another, or if we can assign or change a custom property to a configuration, the next time that table is edited, we're going to see a list of those features. And that's what we were talking about before, is that dialog box right there. For the new configurations in a model, we can always add new configurations on our own. We don't have to add those in the design table. We can come in, just right-click, add in a new configuration like we always do, and that will pop up and autofill into the design table for us also. So, talking about the planning side of the design table and the parameters that we can control, we can go into the help menu. If you type in design table parameters, this is the list that you're going to see. And this breaks it down to parts, assemblies, and parts and assemblies. This shows us all the different variables that can be put in, the syntax that we need, and the value that's evaluated for it as well. So you can go in and manually type in any of these values, or we can double click on dimensions to add those in, like we said before. But other items that are useful, adding in comments. You got to remember, you're not going to be the only one who's working on this design table. Other designers are going to be working on it as well. So adding in comments of what this line does, don't change this variable beyond this. Those are all things that become very useful later on when somebody else is working on this design table. Same thing goes with user notes. Then we can get into, mass, parent-child states, things like that. There's a lot of different options inside of here that we can grab with those variables. I have them printed out and attached to the wall of my office. So when we're planning for a design table, we want to think about the parameters. When possible, we want to build the model with configurations in mind. So we think about how we dimension our model. Make sure our dimensions are put in there appropriately. Are they dimensioned to things that are always going to be there? Did you dimension to a fillet that might go away at some point in time by suppressing it? Avoid creating children features that are going to be suppressed. Once again, tagging things to fillets or chamfers. We also want to look at how complex is the part. How many features are you going to, in dimensions are going to be involved? How many configurations do we need to create? Is the model complete in its design? Sometimes we want to wait to build our design table until our model is completely done. If we add in additional features, how is that going to affect that design table? Is there any swoopy geometry, underdefined shapes? If we have splines or anything like that for controlling a profile of our part and we change the length of our part, how is that spline going to react at that point in time, or how is that curve going to react? We also want to look at, are there any external references to other parts or assemblies? Will equations ultimately be useful? If so, what kind of equations are you going to be using? SOLIDWORKS equations. Are you going to be using Excel functions? Or are you going to be using both? More often than not, I find out you end up using both. And you got to be careful of that because they can cause conflicts with each other. The more time that you take, when you start this process of planning these things out, thinking about how the model is going to be built, it's going to help you out in the long run. So the other big thing is naming. You always want to make sure that we name our features. What dimensions will change, whatever they are, name them. What features are going to be involved, name them. You can see in the example that we have there, we take boss extrude 1, sketch 1, cut extrude 1, sketch 2, and we rename those to something more appropriate for what we're building at that point. We got rod, hole, pipe diameter, length at rod. All of these things update at that point in time. When we look at our part that we've created here that already has the design table, you can see it's been renamed to pipe. It's been renamed to pipe sketch. If I come in and edit this sketch and click on my dimension, I look at what the name of that dimension is in there, and it's pipe diameter. So all of these things are set up for me so that when I go to put it into a design table, it's not just going to be in there, D1 at sketch 2. Nobody's going to know what that is 2 years down the line or 3 years down the line when this thing's edited. So, and like I said, you're not going to be the only one working on these at any point in time, so you want to make sure these things are set up appropriately. Any questions on modifying those? No? All right. Yeah.
If you change the name of the sketch, will it automatically change in the design table after you've done that?
The question was, if you do change the name of a feature or sketch, will that update the design table? Yes, it will. It'll update that accordingly as well. So it's a good question. Thank you. So execution tips. As far as dimension displays, when editing a design table, we want to see the dimensions so we can double click on them. We can double click on a feature to display just its dimensions, but you got to be careful. If you double click on a feature to display its dimensions, it's going to add that feature to the design table for you. So you may end up with a feature that you don't want inside of there. We can also right click on the annotations folder and select show feature dimensions to display every dimension. If this is too many, our part here is pretty simple, so it only shows a few dimensions. But if it does show too many dimensions, we can right click on any feature and hide its specific dimensions. So looking at this here, we can come into the annotations folder here, tell it to display annotations and show feature dimensions. It has every dimension of my part here at this point in time. So we got all those. If there are some of these that I do not want to see, if I don't want to see the dimensions for the whole, for example, I can right click on that and tell it hide all dimensions for that feature. It takes out the one dimension in this case for that feature. The only downfall to this is you cannot grab and multi-select two items and tell it to hide or show all dimensions for those features. So this is done one at a time, and I right click on it again and tell it show all dimensions, and it brings those back. Other things that may be useful for you as well are going to be dimension names. Little set of eyeglasses here. We got D1 that's listed right there. If you do that, now we can see we got the pipe diameter, we got the hole diameter, we have the length. So there's another item that you may want to turn on depending on what you're doing. So some of the execution tips that we have as far as our design tables are concerned, we want to start simple. Trial and error is going to be your best friend with this. Add user notes. So if you're going to start building this, put in just a few features. Put in a couple of key items that you want to change. Exit out of the design table. See how that works at that point in time. Make sure everything rebuilds the way that you would expect it to. Don't add too much if you can. You don't want to go in there. If I'm not controlling, the outside diameter, don't put it in the design table at that point in time. It's just unnecessary items that people are going to wonder why they're out there. Also, as you're putting in all these different items, save a copy of the design table. We can easily highlight this, start up a new Excel window, and say paste it into there. The last thing you want to do is go in and make 100 different changes to your design table, have one syntax error in there, go to click outside of the design table and it says, oh, I'm not going to update it, and you lose all your changes at that point in time. Nothing worse than wasting all that time. Don't skip any rows or columns. Wherever you put a gap in there, like you see in the lower right there, if there's a gap in there, that's it. It stops at that point in time. If it sees a gap, it's done. It'll ignore the rest of the values that are beyond that gap. So kind of bringing it all together here. Pipe example that we did. Had a customer that came to me and said, I want to build this part with all these different configurations. And they gave us this chart. You look at it, you go, it's a few configurations, it's not bad. Until they tell you that there's 106 different sizes and schedules. And they want 4 materials for each size and schedule. Now you're up to 424 different size, schedule, material configs. It's not too bad. Then they tell you they want each size, schedule, and material in 1/8-inch increments from 1 inch to 20 feet. End result is 811,000 configurations about. Yeah, you don't want to put that all inside one design table. Could you imagine what the part file size would be at that point in time? How long it would take you to load it or rebuild it? So be aware of what you're building. Take a look at what the end result is going to be is what it comes down to with this. All right, so what else can we do? We said that we have all the power of Excel inside of here as well. So how can we bring this together? We can do formulas, drop-down boxes, conditional formatting, concatenations. All of these are items that we can put inside of our design table. And these are things that are going to make it that much easier for you to work on with this. And let's see here, I don't think the one thing I didn't do was open that up ahead of time. So there we go. We'll pull this one up here. So we'll take a look at this guy. We'll zoom in on it so we can see exactly what's going on with him. And we can see we got all our different variables in there. But what else we have inside of here is how these things are built and put together. When we look at the name of this, it's a concatenation. It's pulling from all these different cells that are out there. So it's grabbing what the length is, it's grabbing what the material, it's grabbing what the schedule is, and it's auto-populating that into the name of our configuration for us. On top of that, remember our customer said they want 1/8-inch increments. And you can see all these are set up in 1/8 inch because this value here is equal to the cell above it plus 1/8 of an inch. So starting to build in some of these formulas are going to make it that much easier for you. Our pipe schedule. You can see over here on the far side, I got a column that says user notes. You can see it on that one too. Schedule sizes. Hit the drop down list here. Here's all my different schedules. What's cool about this? Change one, changes all of them for you. Not only does it do that, but it changes all of our configuration names for us. So we're making this intelligent and making our work that much easier when people go to change this later on. And what's great about all of this, just by building in literally 2 rows, I'm able then to come in here, grab one row, drag this down, it's going to auto-generate all of those for us. All the config names, all the sizes, everything. It's all done in one shot there. Yes, sir?
How do you create the drop-down?
Drop-down inside of Excel, you add in your column here, and it's been a while since I put one in. Validation. Thank you. Thank you guys. See? That's why I got you guys here. Data validation there. So, all right. Yeah. Yeah. Like I said, it's not something I do every day, but once you get these things built, they do work out very well. All right. All right, so what do we want to do if we want to take this to the next level? We have the configuration publisher. Anybody here use the config publisher? A few people. All right. We won't get into all the details of the configuration publisher. We'll kind of cover the basics of it. I know there's a few other presentations I think out there this week that go into a little bit deeper dive of the config publisher. But what this does is it creates a property manager to allow easy configuration selection. And what this means is when users are inserting parts into an assembly downloading a model from 3D Content Central, we end up with a similar property manager that we see when we're inserting toolbox hardware into an assembly. So how do we go about building all of this? There's two different ways that we can build these config publisher files. We can do a single line design table, so it includes all the parameters that might change, only includes one configuration line. You need a $ part number, is used to control the name of the new config. And in my case here, I use concatenations based on text and other cells, kind of like I did in that other example there. So what we have, when we jump over to Excel, so we start off with part like we had before. We have a single line design table in here. When we add that table, you can see it's just like we have inside the screenshot there. It'll list out all our different variables. We have concatenations in there. We have sizes. All of that is in there. So these are the basic values that we want to start with for this item. And then what do we do with it from that point? To create the model, we create the model and the single line table. We right click in the config manager and we select the config publisher. And there you get the publisher dialog box there. And what this allows us to do is start to add in our attributes. So we tell it what we want to control or what we want to create. Nominal diameter. We pick our design table parameter that we want to put in there. And then what type of item do we want with it? In this case, we chose a list. We put in all the values that we want for that list. So now we're telling it what diameters we're going to be able to create with this design table or with this configuration publisher. Do the outer diameter. We can link these up to other variables as well. The pipe sketch, list, and we can tie this into the parent of being the nominal diameter at that point in time. So as soon as the nominal diameter changes, the outer diameter is going to change as well at that point in time. So we can start creating these links between these different items. And you go through and you keep building all of these different items. We got our nominal, or our schedule, our wall thickness, weight per foot, all of these variables that we put into there. Some of the other things that we can put in here as well. Material and length. One of the things that it has in there is a data validation range. Yeah, range requirements, our minimum and our maximum, and what our increment is. So remember, we said the customer that we had wanted 1 inch to 20 feet in 1/8 inch increments. There you go, 1 inch, 240, 1/8 inch increments at that point in time. So what does this look like when it's all said and done? Come on over here. So this is what we end up with. We got our nominal diameter. And we can see these are just like those screenshots that I showed you. And all it was is just a matter of bringing a variable out of here and assigning it the appropriate links inside of here. And we set all these up so that we have this. We can do a SOLIDWORKS preview of this. So if we want to see what this model is going to look like, we can choose what our diameter is. So if I change it to 1/2 inch, it changes what the OD is. If I change my schedule to be 80, it changes my wall thickness and my weight per foot. So I have a few driving values and I have my driven values in there as well. And it makes it nice because everything updates. We can see exactly what's going to happen ahead of time. Choose our material, and we got our length in here. So once again, we can type in 3 inches, and that's going to be okay. If we tell it to update model, I probably should have got out of my design table first here. Let's get out of that real quick. Let's come back over here and edit this feature again so we can see them. Shrink that down. There we go.
Is the configuration manager new 2015?
No, configuration manager has been out there for, or config publisher has been out there for quite a few years. It's just something that not a lot of people are necessarily using. So So we tell this 3 inches, we tell it to update the model, it updates it. If I tell it to be 3.0625 update model, your input value is out of range at that point in time. So it knows exactly what to do. If I tell this to be 1,000 inches, hit update model, tells me it's out of range. So it is a very intelligent item at that point in time as well. Makes this a lot easier for end users to work with the models when they don't necessarily understand configs. Yeah, put what the units are in there as well. I'll have to go back and double check and see what it would take to add the units in there also. So, all right.
What's the use of the configuration?
Publisher. The use of it is if you have, 20, 30 different users of the software, or just a few who don't understand configurations, you got all locked down inside of this. They can't screw it up at that point in time. Nobody can go in, like I say, and create a pipe that's 3 1/16 of an inch when 3 1/8 is the limiting factor at that point. So you're basically just controlling the environment at that point. That's really what it comes down to. All right. So what else can we do with our configuration publisher? Multi-line design table, or a multi-line table. We build our full design table exists ahead of time. It includes all of the different configurations. And we can see we got everything listed out there. And what do? The publisher acts a little bit differently. Instead of just having 3 different items to choose and build all our variables, we right-click in there, we do our config publisher, we got our list of variables that's already created because it's pulling them from this design table that we already created. So the first one, the single line, that's pretty much an infinite number of configurations that can be created. In the case that I have there, the first one I created, I could create all 800,000 configurations with the way I set that up. With this one here, I'm now limiting the group of configurations that can be created to somewhere in the 30 to 40 range at that point in time. So now I'm limiting the users to what they have access to. And all I have to do is just drag those variables across. It's automatically linked up to the design table variable at that point. And we end up with a config publisher that looks fairly similar to what we had before, but a little bit different. So let's open that guy up. So we got our part here. Once again, simplified part that we're creating here. There's our list of variables already created because we created it with the design table. If I edit this feature that's been generated here, we'll minimize the spreadsheet there just so we got that out of the way. So when we go to our SOLIDWORKS preview, now here's what the users get. Instead of being able to choose an OD or anything like that, you got a set of just very simple lengths at that point in time. What the width is. We only limit them to 2 values. What the depth is. How many holes are in there, hole or no hole. And it'll tell you what configuration it's creating based upon that. And we can update the model and get a preview of what we end up with there. So we have the infinite model and we got the limiting model is what it amounts to. It's, once again, what you want the end users to have access to when it's all said and done. Sorry, when we're in and creating that config publisher, we're in the configuration tab up top here. And so you're just right clicking on the top and configuration publisher out of there. All right. We're doing okay on time, it looks like. All right, so design tables and assemblies. How is it similar to part models? Custom properties work the same way. Dimensions work the same way, except we're controlling mate dimensions at this point in time. We're displaying reference geometry dimensions. Suppress and unsuppress, they work the same way. with a little bit of a twist. In a part, we suppress features. In an assembly, we suppress components and assembly features. And in an assembly, we resolve components rather than unsuppress them. Don't ask me why one's called resolve, one called, unsuppress. I don't know about that one. So how is it similar to part models? When we had up all the different design table parameters before, we had 3 different boxes there. One of these was parts and assemblies. These are all of the things that are similar between our parts and our assemblies. So all these variables work in both types of design tables. How is it different from parts? Levels. We have to consider levels when we look at assemblies. We don't suppress a part feature or change a part dimension from the assembly level. What we want to do is we want to do that at the part level. We create a new configuration. In the new part configuration, we suppress the part features or change the part dimensions. Then at the assembly level, we create a new configuration or a new assembly level configuration, and we reference that new part configuration. The reason that you do that is if you go and just start allowing your assembly design table to make changes to the part, what's going to happen to your 2D drawing at that point in time? What's going to happen to other assemblies that are referencing that? If they're all referencing the same configuration, they're going to be all over the place at that point. So you need to make sure that you change those variables or create a variable at the part level and then reference that at the assembly level. The other thing that we need to consider is instances. We might want to suppress one instance of a component that has multiple instances inside of an assembly. Once again, simple example here, a plate with 2 rods coming out of it. If we want to include instances in the parameter row, you can see the parameter is in brackets there. So if we only want to include one, item 3, we put 3 in brackets. If we want to include number 1 and number 3, there's a comma in between them. If you put a dash, it includes all 3 of them. If you put an asterisk in there, anything that has that component name will automatically carry that configuration along with it. So these are some of the basic Windows or Excel type of formatting that you have to remember as you go through and build these. So how is it similar or different than part models? These are the design table parameters that are unique to assemblies alone. So we have display state, whether a component is fixed or floating, the state at a component, and the configuration. All right, so kind of bringing it all together, what do we do at the end here? A model's design table can be shown on a drawing sheet. We select a view, we tell it to insert tables design table, or you can right click on a view and choose to bring in a design table. The problem that we have when we do this is exactly this. It looks like it's a mess. So let's go back. I'm going to close out a couple of these other models that we have open here. And actually this one will work out just fine, I believe. It's the one we want. We'll go ahead and open up this drawing view. So we got a drawing of a few different items here. We right click on this, we tell it we want to bring in a table, we want to bring in our design table. Problem with this is we can see this guy up over here. That's really what you want to put out on your to the shop floor. Kind of a mess at that point in time, right? So what do we do to clean this up? Problem that we have is what we see on the drawing should match what we see when we're editing the design table in the internal window, not the edit table in separate window. We can hide rows that we don't want to see on the drawing. We can resize the sub window to show only a portion of it. We can add in notes for user notes to hide different variables and clean it up. And you can see kind of a 4-step process there of cleaning it up and what we end up with. Now one of the tricks here, just double click on the design table in your drawing. Automatically goes back to your part model. Allows us to open this up. Thinking about it, maybe. I got a bunch of stuff fired up there, so maybe that's part of that. Oh. Let's try that again. Let's edit that table. Sorry about that. There we go. So what we want to do with this guy here is we want to clean this up. We want to drag this up so we're only seeing the configure or the lines that we want inside of that drawing. If I would want to show, I don't necessarily want to show the state there at that point in time, so I can bring that over there. I don't want to show this top row here, so we can hide this one here. If we hide that, now we're getting down where we just see length, whole, yes or no. Bring this up one more to get rid of that other line, and literally we bring it down just to this shrunken down little window. I know it's kind of small on these screens here, but what we end up with when we tab back over, it's all large still at this point in time. Do a Control Q rebuild. Tells me it's updating. Come on. Just thinking about it. There we go. Updates to exactly what we saw inside the internal window at that point in time. So that's how we can clean this up and bring this back down to be exactly what we want. Like I said, it's not always good for the editing side of things, but you know, the end result of what we show in the drawing, that's what we really want to end up with. So that's, once again, why editing table in a new window is sometimes a lot better option, because we can have this cleaned up for the drawing side of things. It would change that drawing, yes. Yeah, that is the downside to that. I'm sorry, sir, you up front had a question also. Okay. Yeah, that is, and that's something that guys, you know, definitely put out. If that's something that you want to do and you have a problem with, put out an enhancement request to SOLIDWORKS at that point in time. Contact your VAR, put out the enhancement request, because that's the only way that these things are going to get changed inside the software. I've been doing this presentation a long time. Ever since I've been doing design tables, it's always been set up this way. That is the only option for controlling what you see, short of saving out a copy of it, but then you've broken the link at that point in time. So, some of the final points to cover here. There are Microsoft OLE size limitations that might cut off some of the design table in the drawing. Editing the table, decreasing the font size, resizing the sub-window can sometimes address the problem. You know, shrinking the column widths, the row heights down, that will get in those extra values. As I showed you before, if you double click on a design table on a drawing sheet, SOLIDWORKS will open the model and execute the edit table command, as long as you don't have a bunch of other windows open like I did. So it'll let you go longer. All right, I know. If you save it as a 2007 table, it'll let you go longer with it. So if you save it as a 2007 file format. Thank you. So this is all of what we covered here today. Once again, appreciate you guys coming out. If you want a copy of the presentation, you can head out to our website there, CATI.com, SWW 2015. If you change that to 2014, 2013, you get all of our other presentations that we've done as well. And did I put, yes, there it is. CATI has done a lot of, and Inflow, our other sister company, have done a lot of presentations out here this year. So if you haven't seen these other ones, you can go and download those. Or if you want to see more of our presentations, we got a few more coming up. I got one more tomorrow. By the way, who's been to all three of mine so far? Anybody? Couple guys still. All right, good deal. I expect you two to be in my fourth one tomorrow. I'm just saying. So, all right. Well, thank you guys. I appreciate everybody coming out. Enjoy the rest of the show.